Since the first international match was played between England and Scotland in 1872, international football has been seen as the pinnacle of the game by many. For almost a century, the likes of Italy, Brazil and Germany have enjoyed sustained success and consistently competed at major tournaments, whilst other nations have been and gone, having golden generations mixed among less gifted groups of players. This list is in regards to the greatest individual teams, not which international team has been the greatest over their entire history. Of course, there is no definitive criteria by which greatness can be defined. Having said that, one would expect a truly great team to win the vast majority of their games, perform at major tournaments, and play with a certain style which captured the public's imagination, or left a lasting impression upon the sport. Here are our 7 greatest national teams of all time. West Germany, 1972 to 1976. A very honourable mention for this 7 will be the Dutch national team of 1974 to 1978, and one of the major reasons for their omission was the fact that they won nothing. That could all have been very different were it not for the West German team of the same era. In the 3 major tournaments between 1972 and 1976, West Germany won Euro 72, won the 1974 World Cup, and reached the final of Euro 76. With Franz Beckenbauer in defence and Gerd Müller spearheading the side, the West Germans had 2 all-time greats, featuring in what was already a very complete team. France, 1998 to 2000. Everything seemed to come together perfectly for the French national team over this brief 2-year period. They were to host the World Cup in 1998, and as the tournament dawned, it became clear that they had a very strong squad, well capable of winning the competition. The likes of Laurent Blanc, Didier Deschamps, Marcel Desailly, Lilian Thuram and Emmanuel Petit were all at the peak of their powers, whilst youngsters such as Patrick Vieira, Thierry Henry and David Trezeguet all burst onto the scene. Unarguably, however, the most important player for France was Zinedine Zidane. One of the finest midfielders in the history of the game, Zidane was integral to both France's European and World Cup successes in 98 and 2000. They beat an excellent Brazil team 3-0 in the final to cap off a fine performance at the 1998 World Cup, and they were even better 2 years later, as their promising youngsters began to fulfil their potential. They beat Italy in extra time in the final of Euro 2000 to complete the rare feat of back-to-back major trophy wins. Italy, 1934 to 1938. Having not entered the first tournament in 1930, the 1934 World Cup was Italy's first, and it took place on home soil. The Italians won the tournament and then repeated the feat 4 years later in France. Back-to-back World Cup wins is an achievement which has only been replicated once since, by the Brazilians, and the Italy manager Vittorio Pozzo remains the only man to have won 2 World Cups as a manager. A revolutionary coach, Pozzo invented the Metodo formation, a 2-3-2-3 setup which allowed for greater defensive solidity and an ability to counter-attack effectively. Their first win in 1934 was shrouded in controversy. Mussolini used the tournament to promote fascism, and an array of controversial decisions seemed to go in Italy's favour, which has perhaps sullied the legacy of this great team. However, there were no questions over their 1938 success, and spearheaded by the legendary Giuseppe Meazza, this Italian team was undoubtedly one of the greatest of all time. Brazil, 1970. Probably regarded by most as the greatest national team of all time, the Brazil team at the 1970 World Cup did not just win, they won emphatically and in style. The likes of Pelé, Carlos Alberto, Jairzinho, Rivellino and Gerson played a brand of football which was thrilling in the first World Cup to be broadcast in colour. Brazil won every qualifying game for the tournament and continued that record at the tournament proper, winning all 6 games in the simmering heat of Mexico. Mario Zagallo became the first manager to win the World Cup as both a player and manager, and he prepared his team excellently, training at high altitude levels ahead of the tournament, meaning his team were not only technically superb, but also the fittest at the competition. The team is possibly best remembered and best epitomised by their final goal of the World Cup final, a superb passing move which culminated in a perfectly laid pass by Pelé, which Carlos Alberto struck cleanly into the bottom corner, giving Brazil a comfortable 4-1 win over Italy. Spain, 2008 to 2012. The Spanish national team may have come crashing back down to earth in Brazil in 2014, but from 2008 to 2012, they were one of the greatest national teams of all time. When Spain romped home 4-0 in the final of Euro 2012 to make it 3 major trophies in a row, many people declared that they were the greatest national team to ever take to the field. Largely made up of a blend of the excellent Barcelona and Real Madrid teams, their style of play was most similar to that of Barcelona. A glance at the team's bench, often featuring the likes of Cesc Fabregas, David Silva and Santi Cazorla, was an indication of the sheer class of that side. Many teams tried various ways of stopping Spain from playing their passing game, most notably the Netherlands' aggressive tactics in the 2010 World Cup final, but none succeeded. Spain eventually broke the Dutch down through Andres Iniesta to win their first World Cup in 2010, and a trio of major tournament wins ensures their status as one of the greatest national teams in history. Hungary, 1949 to 1956. Some will argue that a team cannot be the second greatest national team of all time, having failed to win a major tournament. But hard luck, this Hungarian team is absolutely brilliant, and it's my call, so here they are. Although they failed to win a World Cup, Hungary were the best team in the world in the early to mid 1950s, so much so that their defeat in the 1954 World Cup final became known as the Miracle of Bern. Such was the surprise that West Germany actually won the game. From 1950 to 1956, Hungary won 42 games, drew 7 and lost just once in that World Cup final. In those 50 games, they had an overall aggregate scoreline of 249 goals scored and just 61 goals conceded, meaning they averaged a fraction shy of 5 goals scored per game. Ferenc Puskás and Sandor Kocsis are perhaps the two best remembered players of the Magical Magyars, along with the withdrawn forward Nandor Hajdúci. Puskás scored 84 goals in 85 games for Hungary, whilst Kocsis scored 75 in 68. Hungary's tactical approach to the game under Gustav Sebs, requiring players to contribute to multiple phases of play, was revolutionary and later adopted by every country. The English were in shock after the Hungarians thrashed them 6-3 at Wembley in 1953, displaying their tactical and technical superiority in style, and Hungary ran out 7-1 victors in the return fixture on home soil a year later. Brazil, 1958 to 1962. Earlier, in the introduction, we outlined the basic principles by which greatness could possibly be measured. Success at major tournaments, a distinctive footballing philosophy, and a lasting legacy were the three main criteria, and this Brazil team had all three in abundance. Whilst the 1970 Brazil team are widely considered as the pinnacle of flair and style, coming together to create a footballing machine, the Brazil team of 1958 to 1962 played with just as much elegance a decade earlier. Not only was this team, man for man, probably the greatest of all time, they also revolutionised the way in which the game is played. They introduced the defensive back four to the world, with both fullbacks rampaging forward and joining in with attacking moves, something which blew teams away. They were the first team to begin experimenting with sports psychologists, as well as using doctors and physical specialists in a way no other team had previously. At the tender age of 17, Pelé introduced himself to the world at the 1958 World Cup in Sweden. Despite his limited years, he scored a brace in the final as Brazil thrashed the hosts 5-2. Pelé is of course the best remembered member of this era of Brazilian football, but this team showed their greatness as a collective group when they lifted their second World Cup in 4 years in 1962, despite losing Pelé in only the second game. As well as Pelé, the Brazil squads of these years included the likes of Garrincha, Didi, Djalma Santos, Nilton Santos, Vavá and more. And Brazil never lost a game in which Garrincha and Pelé both played. The perfect combination of silk and steel, they won back-to-back World Cups in emphatic style, and they still remain the only South American nation to win a World Cup in Europe. When one looks at what they achieved, both in their on-field success and revolutionary methods off the field, it's difficult to argue that they're not the greatest national team of all time. So that's it for our top 7. Honourable mentions go to the Netherlands team of 1974 to 1978, the Brazil team of 1998 to 2002, the Great England team of the mid to late 1940s, and Austria's historic Wunder team. Let us know your favourite national teams in the comments. Thanks for watching, give us a like if you enjoyed the video, feel free to check out some of our other videos, such as those displayed on screen now, and don't forget to subscribe to HITC 7s.